Hi, welcome to the next episode of the Aspire Show, brought to you by the STEM partnership of Science Centre Singapore, the Singapore Institute of Technology and Neo Aeronautics. Well, we have heard in the past series in September on technopreneur, incubator, and also from the president of the Singapore Manufacturing Federation, which helps to organize trips and upgrade the manufacturing industry. Today, we're going to go a little bit further to look beyond not just an entrepreneur and technopreneur, but to going to the venture capital industry, going to the acceleration, going to cross boundaries, and how to do business in overseas, especially in China. So together with us, with lots of experience, is Mr. Jay Teo. Let's join Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Prof.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, and so we are pretty much conversational style here.
Yep.
And if you have questions along the way, type in your Zoom chat and we'll get it answered along the way. So the first part of the session will pretty much be Jay talking about his experience so that you have a background, and followed by me asking maybe what we call insightful questions, and then we'll answer your questions. All right, so we have three parts. All right, Jay, so you can start now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jay. I am a venture partner of a venture fund in Shanghai. It's called Coco Capital. The fund AUM is currently about 5 billion Chinese yuan. We do investment of early stage and also from Series C onwards. Besides that, I am also the CEO of SSII, which is an accelerator in Singapore. Main purpose is to help accelerate our Singapore technology startups into markets like China, US, or even India. So so I think that's our conversation tonight with Prof about all these cross-border and how to look beyond Singapore market.
Okay, so maybe we can start with your entrepreneur experience, right, before you become a VC, right?
Yeah.
So, when do you start your first business? I heard that you got a lot of houses in US,
So,
right? Like rows of houses in US.
No. Yeah. So I started forex trading back in I think 2009. So it is a self-proprietary firm. So I partner with two other partners, and we put a sum of money, and we start doing spot forex trading for about 1.5 years. That was really intense. 3 of us were like in the military doing 8-hour shift each. So we cover the 24 hours because forex market has no off market time. So back then we would start from Monday mornings 5 a.m. all the way till Saturday 4 a.m. when the New York market closes. So gradually after a while it became a bit too intense because the only 2 holidays that the market is not working is Christmas Day and 1st of January. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine Chinese New Year, we have to be at work because the market is not closed. So for that 2 years, it was really intensive. So gradually after we started building a steady pot, we started looking into automating our trades. So from there, we started automating our trades, and then things got quite automated, and then we all started looking into different areas of interest. And then subsequently, I joined a German company in Hong Kong. So we do precision tooling. I joined them because of M&A that's happening. And subsequent, after the M&A, I became part of the package that was sold to the buyer. So I continued that business. I continued working with the new buyer. And unfortunately, after that purchase, our buyer got acquired by a bigger company. And that new company had a presence in China already. So there was a duplicate, and market was bad for them at that time. It was a downhill slide for the solar business. And subsequently, the business GM and myself and one other director bought over the business from the director, and then we started to sell the assets to streamline our manpower costs, because in China, unfortunately, labor cost is getting quite high. So back then, I think at a peak we had like 300 workers in the factory. So the only way for us to sustain is really to sell the assets, become asset light, and then keep a lean team, and we just do all the critical things like design, engineering, and quality. So everything else manufacturing we outsource. So yeah, I have that, and then from there I also started venturing into a food safety consultancy business, which we were partnering a logistic firm to do cold chain in China. What happened is we help the clients of this logistic company to assess feasibility in the cold chain supply chain in China. We do feasibility report, help them get certification from internationally recognized certifying body for all the various food safety like HACCP, I can't remember all the terms now. So I have that as well, but also I've taken a backseat role. So now I am more focused in, from there I had all this experience in all the cross-border business culture. I think that's where I learned a lot, because I realized, be it in Europe, be it in US, be it in China, or even Singapore, everywhere has their own business culture that is unique to themselves. And from there, I started talking to a friend who is a VC in China. He asked if I could have a look at one of his portfolio company. He feels that that company is ready to venture beyond China. So I said, okay, I can take a look and see how I could help. So the idea was to take this company to Singapore, to use Singapore as a springboard to the overseas market. So from there, we actually were very fortunate that because of the ability of this company, within 6 months they actually have revenue, contract revenue of about 10 million Singapore dollars. So the traction went up very quickly, but during these 6 months we actually experienced a lot of difficulties with them, because the mentality is very different. So when I first brought him to Singapore, when I arranged for meetings with potential clients, these clients actually asked for a deck or introduction of what they do. Unfortunately, when I asked the founder, he said, we do not have a deck. So I said, okay, then can you tell me what you do? We do AI. I said, okay, that's a very broad term. I said, because all these organizations need to actually bring in appropriate people from the relevant departments to sit into the meeting. So through this exercise, we realized that actually how it works in China for his kind of business, he just needs to talk to the business owner, which is like the owner of big logistic firms. And then the owner will actually bulldoze this idea into his staff to actually execute this project. So I said, okay, change in strategy. I cannot arrange to meet these people in a official office capacity. So I asked them for coffee and, you know, drinks, you know, after work drinks, so that, you know, we can lighten the mood, and then they could see who are the relevant people, because the founder isn't helping by not having a deck or just telling me that what they do is AI. So, but his technology is really good, because within the first week after that casual meetup, immediately that week we all had official meeting with all the people that, yeah. So that was how I started into this VC arena. Then this friend's partner, which is another fund, which is Coco Capital. So the founder actually saw a value in what we do. And also because back then I started mentoring in NUS SUTD in commercialization, technology commercialization in the LLP program. So he saw what we did was actually very useful, because in China, a lot of things is actually do until you fail or do until you succeed. So there wasn't really a lot of real education or, you know, validating your business plan before rolling out. This goes to as far back as far into Tsinghua even, that, you know, a lot of these, they have very good technologies, but they are really backed by money to try to make it successful, or it just failed. So that was how SSII was born. It was originally a joint venture with Coco Space, actually. So Coco Capital is the venture arm of Coco Space. So Coco Space is the co-working space in Yangtze River Delta. So we currently have approximately 3 million square feet of space under management. The whole idea was actually incubating startups, and also we want a venture arm for them to, you know, have support in terms of investment. So that's how Coco Capital was born. The founder himself, he was a partner in IV Capital. It's quite a large venture capital in China. So he has many years of experience in the VC industry as well, in the startup. In fact, he was one of the top 50 Forbes top VC in China back in 2019. So he has a lot of experience, and he started Coco Space, and then he feels that, okay, with his experience in the VC scene, he should actually start Coco Capital to support these as well. So we form a partnership. SSII is a joint venture between Coco Capital and us in Singapore, and the whole idea is for us to look at Singapore startups that has the potential to venture into China, which is a much larger market than Singapore itself. And also for us to bring the education that we have in our local universities to educate their portfolio companies, or even potential companies that they intend to invest in, but to have proper business education before they make a decision whether to invest or not. So that was the whole idea and how SSII was formed. And also because of this, I became part of Coco Capital. Yeah.
Okay. So what you have is a very unique experience of different countries, right?
Yes.
The Singapore, the US, and China, or Hong Kong. So you are raised up in Singapore.
Yep.
Now you live, families in Hong Kong,
Yep.
and most of the business in China. So let's take a look at you obviously come across many entrepreneurs in these three, I would say, three sites. So Hong Kong,
I think
China.
we leave Hong Kong out of the equation.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the let's say what's the difference between the the entrepreneurs you met, right, in China and in Singapore?
Okay. Yes, I do talk a lot of this when I'm back in Singapore and even when I'm in China. So like I shared earlier, Coco Space is a co-working space, office rental operator. So all our offices are also inside Coco Space as well. So sometimes when we go back to the office in the evening, after dinner, like 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, actually our hot desk area, which is usually on the first floor of the building. So the concept of Coco Space is we usually take the entire building so that larger companies can take up the entire floor, or we can, we have office units on the upper floor, but usually the ground floor is all hot desk area. So I would say when we go back after dinner, like 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, our hot desk area is still buzzing with people. It's like, I think there's a few factors to that. First, in China, the culture is that a lot of the local are more willing to put in effort in a local startup with a unknown traction yet. But because they will be part of the founding team, and if there's an exponential growth in the company, that's where they make them bucks. Unlike in Singapore, we do have a good population of fresh grads coming out, wanting to join the Big Four, a good MNC, climb the corporate ladder. But unfortunately, in China, the situation is usually the local, when they join an MNC, say American MNC for example, the highest they can probably go is country head.
No.
They won't. It's very difficult for them to go beyond that. So the Chinese mindset is they are more willing to put in effort because they have also seen a lot of success case. We have seen how programmers, of course, these data is from 2020, 2019. Programmer for a good game, mobile game in China, can earn up to 1 million RMB per month.
Okay.
So there's a lot of resources poured in there, and so that's why a lot of the younger generation is willing to put in time and effort. That's one very big push factor. The other factor, especially like in Shanghai and the first tier cities, is very expensive. The city is very expensive, and most of these youngsters, this is not their hometown. Their family is back in their hometown. So maybe for them, some of them, the not so sociable ones, would tend to stay in the office, to work, or have at least there's colleagues around. Yeah. So that's the whole mentality in China, in the startup scene. In Singapore, sometimes when we go to Block 71, that's where most of our startups are housed. Once we go at 6, 7 o'clock, it's usually starts to get a bit dim and dark. So it's quite substantially different. The other difference is also in terms of fundraising. I think fundraising is another big factor that affects the difference between Singapore and China. Primarily, it's also because in China it's a bigger market. But I would say, given two similar founders with similar intellectual level, starting on the same level, but the finishing line is different. Because in Singapore, I probably raised 250,000. But in China, we are funding very early stage startups between 5 to 20 million yuan. So the whole runway is very different. So you can imagine in Singapore, even if you raise 200,000, you can probably hire 2 more person. But in China, I have 1 million Singapore dollars equivalent. My manpower cost is still slightly lower than Singapore. I have a lot more human resource available in China. So my runway is longer and my takeoff speed is faster.
Okay, so maybe obviously the markets are different, right?
Yes.
Let's look at the mentality, right? So do you see the difference between, let's say, people who start up, right, in Singapore and China, how big they think they can grow, right? Because it's completely different markets, right? I
Yes.
mean, would you be able to say like in Singapore, you use Singapore as a reference or use global as a reference? People always say, okay, logically you use global as a reference, but when you look at a business plan, actually what is in their mind?
A lot of the Singapore founders I see, their target is always Singapore. And a lot of startups that I've met are also answering to government calls. So much so, they actually do neglect the outside of Singapore market.
Yeah.
Because there are different things that have different regulation, different products, different technology. Sometimes when you step out of Singapore, it becomes you have to address different regulatory. I mean, if you talk about medical device and all these, they're all different. They're all different regulatories. You can, yeah. So all these, actually, the difference I see. Unfortunately, in Singapore, the difficulties that we have is a very small market. And typically, if we answer to government calls, like, for example, there's a period I see a lot of diabetic diagnosis devices, non-invasive or, trying to address the Singapore diabetic problem. But if we look out of Singapore, in the US, in China, actually there is a lot of such devices.
Oh.
So that is a struggle we have, I find in Singapore, that the market is too small to actually do a big startup. So every time when I talk to a startup, I always ask them, so what's the market? I said, Singapore cannot be considered a market. It can only be considered your test bed. So you have to start thinking, once out of Singapore, what is the next market you want to target? Because that's where you start plotting your path of your technology, your milestones to achieve. Different path, you will require different things, different resource, different amount of money for funding, different kind of revenue. So it's all very different that, the startup should actually start planning at a very early stage. I wouldn't say it is over aggressive to think big at the beginning. I think before you develop your market, your product or your solution, it's always good to understand your market size. If it's too small a market size, I remember sitting in one of Prof's class once at a very, very early stage in my career. Prof ever said, anything below 1 billion market size, don't consider. So that's so back then I was like, okay. But now, after being in this a few years, that is actually, I think you can up that size. In today's value, I think 1 billion is also too small. We have to probably look at 10 billion. But yeah, so we should be looking beyond Singapore. What is available beyond Singapore? What you have to do to achieve that? It's not overlooking. As an investor, from an investor's point of view, if I can see your target, I'll be more willing to invest in you because you have already planned your path. And not when the time comes, and then you start planning. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe since you have done quite a bit of mentorship, right, in NUS, SUTD, SMU. So I'm not trying to see what's the difference between these people, these different group of people. Obviously, they are quite different. Some are business, some are technology. But maybe what's the common things that they should look out for in order to grow big? Whether to bring that business to China, to a bigger market, or to Indonesia to a big market, what do you think they should be doing or planning to do, or how to change your mind? Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough question. Not being biased to any of the institution that you
Yeah.
mentioned. I think it also depends on the level of the founder. Level, I'm talking about, like you say, right? All the 3 different universities, there are a lot of different backgrounds. I won't name, but there are some that are very technology research based, and there's some very business focused, there's some very market focused. So I would say if we look at the very market focused ones, they tend to not have the technology.
Okay.
They tend to do very B2C kind of business, which unfortunately is not my area of strength. Our area of strength is more on the B2B side. So when we look at the technology researchers, the problem that I see is many times these researchers are too in their labs. They do not see outside of, or they do not understand beyond the lab. Or, very common, we see the researcher feel that, oh, their research is very good. There's a demand for, they feel that there's a demand, and but when we try to make commercial sense of this, how to actually generate income, many times they end up being like selling a technology. I said, yeah, so if it's a one-time business, how sustainable, how financially sustainable you are. So the problem is a lot of these technical, it's good, it will be good if we can, mix everybody,
Yeah. Okay.
mix everybody together. The researchers can continue doing their research, the business one do the business for them, and then both communicate. The business can share with the researchers. I think that's the most ideal picture we hope to see. But
Okay.
that's the problem we see these days, unfortunately.
All right. Okay. So let's go back to your VC experience, right? So let's see how many IPOs you have in the last 2 years.
Currently, we have about 5.
Okay.
2 more pending. Probably not this year. Original target was this year, but due to COVID, a lot of things has probably by mid next year we will have another 2 more.
So what's the range of their valuation when they go IPO?
Some of them are okay. Those that went IPO, from the day they IPO'd to now, the value has dropped quite a bit.
Yeah, of course. Recently, we're talking about them going IPO at that point in time.
When they went IPO, some of these value we're looking, we have companies that have about 5 billion renminbi.
5 billion renminbi, which is 1 billion Sing.
Which is 1 billion Sing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ballpark is about there, about 1 to 5.
1 to 5 billion. So they're pretty much all unicorns. Okay.
If you convert into US dollar, it's not unicorn.
5 billion, of course, is a unicorn.
No, 5 billion to US dollar is still not yet. Almost, but not yet.
Okay, almost.
Almost, yeah.
So
but there's this unique thing that I want to mention about
Yeah.
these companies that we have that have IPO. They still consider themselves as startup.
oh, when you IPO, you're still startup.
They still consider themselves as startup.
Why that mentality?
So for
That
them,
means you still cannot fly business class.
recent days more difficult lah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but okay. So the unique thing about these companies, they still consider themselves startups, is because they feel they cannot get too comfortable. Once they get too comfortable, their competitors may overtake them.
Okay. Anyway, 1 billion RMB market size in China is not big.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So this, if you consider a startup, you still got a lot of
Yes.
room to play, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe talk about VC, right? How do you, what kind of target, right? You invest, and what kind of returns are you looking at? How do you assess them that they will eventually give the kind of returns?
Well, there's no fixed formula.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a fixed formula, if you know a fixed formula, please tell me.
Yeah.
But of course, yeah. So we actually look into the team. The team dynamics is very important. I always say we rather invest in a good team with a lousy product than a good product and a lousy team. Because a good team with a lousy product, I can coach them how to make the product better. But a lousy team with a good product, most of the time, the product will just fail. So
okay.
the team dynamics is the key. And that is also why we had the intention to have SSII, to provide education in China, for us to also assess the team, how good they are, or how collaborative they are, or they're all Indian chiefs in the team. So that was the whole idea of.
So the team versus the ideas or the technology.
Yes, correct.
So again, back to the so what's your current returns? How many times?
Our fund currently, we are at about, conservatively, about 14 to 15x.
Okay, 14 to 15x.
Yeah.
Put $1, you get $15 back.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So normally in VC world, right, they use by CAGR compounded,
yes.
right? 20%,
Yes.
25%.
Yes.
So typically if you use 20%, 25%, is like you compounded after 5 years, it's like 2 times, 3 times return, somewhere around there.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah, right. So this is pretty high, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the China firm that you work with, right? And you bring them to Singapore. And so Singapore firms want to go to China. Then China firms want to come. What's the reason?
Okay.
So
So
China is already such a big market, just stay there.
okay, so okay, first I'll talk about the China firm coming to Singapore.
Yeah.
So the reason why the Chinese firm wants to come to Singapore is because they are trying, in China is a dog eat dog world. Actually, the whole world is the same, but in China it's even more brutal. So actually in China, you may look very good with a lot of big clients, but unfortunately the bigger your client is, the more brutal they are, the less margin you make. So for them, they want to step out of China, because when they step out of China, they may still have a technology advantage from the experience that they have in China. I'll give you an example, like this current company that I have recently been seconded to help do expansion. They have been, they're in the energy business. They are not directly in the energy business. They design and make automation line for energy businesses. So how are they different from competitors outside, for example, in Korea or Japan or the US? Because if we look at batteries today, the largest battery manufacturer for EVs, or it's CATL, Changning Sidai. and they are one of the major designer and line producer for this company. Experience, they design many different types of lines. So with that experience they have, when they come out of China, they still have that technology advantage, the knowledge advantage. So when they come out of China, typically we would bring them to Singapore, because in Singapore we have a larger population of Chinese, which is a little bit more palatable to them, more comfortable. There are still people who can speak Chinese to them. For them to start to tune themselves to the international market, because there are a lot of things that works in China may not work outside of China. I'll give you a very simple example. In China, a lot of companies' name are Chinese name.
Yeah.
Right? When Alibaba Cloud started their cloud business, they called themselves Ali Yun. And then they tried to, brand it out and penetrate the cloud market.
So it's the Han Yi Pinyin.
Exactly. So in a non-Chinese speaking community, no one knows what is Ali Yun.
Okay.
So fortunately in this case, Alibaba has enough money to rebrand themselves, to understand to figure out the problem, rebrand themselves, and they called themselves Alibaba Cloud. And from there, the outside China business skyrocketed. But of course today they streamline it further, they call Ali Cloud. So simple things like just the name or the brand makes a big difference, because Han Yi Pinyin in a non-Chinese speaking community, nobody knows what you are. So things like that we fine-tune them in Singapore, and then having one or two case studies in Singapore and springboard out into Europe, the US, to India, to Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So that is the advantage for the Chinese side.
Okay.
So for Singapore side, I think we mentioned quite a bit in today's conversation is access to a much bigger market. So there are still so when I first started coming back to Singapore, I was like, wow, can we still find technology that's got an edge over the Chinese technology?
The Chinese is moving so fast, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah. And for us, the type of things that we see in China is like, wow, So I came back, I was a bit skeptical at the beginning. Then subsequently...
You're trying to say that we got no hope.
I was skeptical, I didn't say no hope.
Okay.
So I started looking into... That's why I started doing mentorship in universities and all, trying to see technologies there, how any potential. And to my surprise, I actually did identify some that had an advantage to go into China. So from there, I became positive. I became optimistic that there is hope to actually have startups or technology startups in Singapore that can still go to China and survive. But of course, going to China is like a jungle. I think calling it a jungle is already very downplaying it. It's worse than a jungle. You can go in and die even before you know you died.
Okay.
So having a partner to take you in, or having to understand the ecosystem of what you are doing in the region that you're landing is also critical.
So let's follow up on the hope, right? From being skeptical to say that there's hope, okay? But hope means that, okay, your ideas, your technology does have some advantage, right? Okay, now the question is that then you bring to China, right? You have the advantage, but that's the technological advantage, right? The markets are different.
Yes.
So you go there, should you should you, there are two ways to look at it. One is I bring a piece of technology and my team include the business people. That's one combination. Or I bring a piece of technology and I look for the local business guys to join me. Which one is a better option?
There is no clear-cut answer to that.
Okay.
It depends how defensible your technology is. If you have a very defensible technology, or you have a certain component of your technology that's in a black box that you can protect, then the ideal way to do it is send your product, get the local business people. Why? Because the local business people are definitely more aggressive and they know the market. They know how to attack the right area. If you bring your product with your local business team, first, your local business team, when they reach, they have to explore. Yes, they may have a bit of inroads, but they will not be as aggressive as the locals there.
Yeah.
So it really dependent on how defensible your technology is.
Okay, so let's say that the technology is defensible, right?
Yes.
And we bring let's say a guy who's trained in business of the founding team and go to China, right? Do you think that he will be like, wow, I'm be as aggressive, or I'm very naive, I believe whatever people say?
He must have his own judgment.
That's a very diplomatic answer, right? Yeah, because if you have not worked or live in the aggressive world, when you go to an aggressive world, you don't even know how to compete.
Yeah.
Because people will just run in front of you,
Yes,
and
correct.
you don't even dare to,
Yeah.
Do you dare to cross the road when there's a red light?
Yes, exactly.
Or
do you dare to cross the road when there's no lights? The lights are 1 kilometer away. Yeah.
It is very interesting. I lived in Shanghai for 2 years, and my wife come visit me. That was in year 1998, right? So when we're crossing the road in Shanghai, right? And, it's just I wouldn't say chaos, but it's bustling with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just crossed.
Yeah.
The car comes, motorbikes, and I just
Yeah.
cross. And then I turn back, and she's on the other side of the road. I said, "Why are you crossing?"
How to cross?
I said, waiting for people to stop. I said, "Huh?"
Nobody will stop.
Yeah, so it's that culture,
Yeah.
that adaptiveness, and some people said that dance, right?
Yes.
That it's either you give way or I give way, right?
Yeah.
But if you move, I give way. You don't move, I don't give way.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that is something that we don't get used to.
Yes.
Not even, I mean, in Singapore, we are all just like rule followers, right?
Yes.
But if you try to cross the road in Jakarta or Thailand,
Yeah.
you see that you're forever at the
You're always
side
at
of the road.
Yep.
Right? You need to nudge
Yes.
and test water, right?
Yes.
Which is the way we're being trained, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think very importantly also, founders should also have the risk appetite. Must have the eagerness to explore and dare to take the first step out.
So how to solve this problem?
How to solve?
Yeah. How to solve this? People who want to set up an entrepreneurial team, and you're in a comfortable environment, and you go overseas with big market, but people are aggressive. How to train our guys? How do you mentor these people?
Yeah, the way you're asking this question, it becomes like a marketing thing for my company.
Yeah.
So what we usually tell the founders is, because we have our resources in China, we are able to identify the right place for them to land. So like I said, Coco Space has 3 million square feet of working space around the Yangtze River Delta region. Yangtze River Delta region is just the Jiangsu, Yancheng, Wuxi area.
Okay.
So it's actually quite substantial. We actually have our people very close communication with local governments, the local ecosystem, to know which area is supportive of what technology or what product. So what we usually do is when we sign a agreement with a company, a startup from Singapore, first our team in China will assess where is the right place to land, based on grants, based on ecosystem, and based on product support, resource support, like manufacturing and all if required. Because honestly, with these things, it's not easily searchable on the internet. It's really my colleagues in China doing the groundwork every day, where we get knowledge, experience, that we have this database that we can access to know where to land so that the chance of succeeding is higher. And because we do that and we have local teams, and because when we sign the agreement, we do take a small equity stake in this business. So for us is you have to succeed before we get our reward. We don't get paid for anything. We don't get paid for anything. So we only get paid when you succeed and our equity become value.
Okay.
So that's how we partner you to make sure you can succeed in China. So,
okay, so you have a formula and the local resource and knowledge for local startups who want to go to China,
Yep.
and then to strategically position them at the location or the ecosystem where they have a higher chance
of succeeding.
of success. All right, great. So I think for people watching, now there's a formula and it's outcome based. That means no retainer. You don't need to pay him until you make money for you. So I think that's great. So in that sense, we like to thank Jay for coming.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know
you for
that
having
he
me.
runs a fund and he can bring you to China. And when he bring to China, he will invest. So look out for him. Hopefully, we'll see you in China.
Thank you.
All right, and that's all for this evening.
Thank you.